So here we are, my dear ones, on this great and glorious day in mid-June, already in mid-June, deep into the month, celebrating Father's Day. And it seems to me that many of the fathers amongst us have already started barbecuing. And we're with them wherever they are. Maybe that's why we had so many more than 9 o'clock. But anyway, my dear ones, here we are, and we continue in our beautiful contemplation of that wonderful thing called empowerment. And today we're looking at empowerment through the eyes of communication, spiritual communication, how we connect with each other. And so, of course, when we hear the word spiritual communication, I'm trusting we're not all thinking of it as something apart from and different from, regular communication, because all communication is spiritual communication, all of it. And as you know, communication is that by means of which you and I connect, commune, link into each other, and share with each other thoughts, ideas, opinions, perspectives, and on and on. It's the way we build relationships through communication. And it's a most important factor in our lives and living because of that. Because we're always building something. You and I never stop building something or another, either on the good side or the not so good side of life, but we're always building something. So you and I are builders. But most particularly at the moment, this week, today especially, we're looking at building stronger, more potent and powerful relationships with each other. And of course, communication is across the board. And in this day and age, we are called to radical communication. We're called to, as some of the writers say, a new species of communication. We need to learn new ways to communicate with each other, because how we've been doing it is not enough, obviously. It's not sufficient. We're not doing it as well as we might. So we are called to a new paradigm in the way we communicate with each other. But of course, our communication with each other will never improve until our communication with ourselves improves. How I relate to myself, how I speak to myself, how I feel about myself, how I imagine within myself, all of that is affecting everything that's outside of myself and my outer world. Because I outpicture in the world, in all of my relationships, what I think about myself, what I feel about myself, and what I'm imagining about myself. That gets outpictured out there in my relationships with others. So it behooves us then to do what the ancient ones called us to do, to know thyself. Man, know thyself. Ancient stones hanging up in a temple way back when, they already knew that. We got to get this thing on planet Earth right. We got to know ourselves and know our real and true selves. We're not talking about the human egoic self at all. We know too much of that. And we identify too much with that. We got to know the deeper inner awareness of the consciousness of being that we are, because I can assure you, thanks be to goodness, we are not the body we're wearing, and we're not all our conditions, we're not all our circumstances, and we're not all our experiences. We are so far more than that, than ever any one of us might imagine. And I was just sharing it this morning, as the Buddhists remind us, to even get ourselves into birth, to get ourselves birthed, it's like the odds are totally against us. They say it's like, think of a circular hoop in the entire cosmos, one hoop. And the way to birth is to find that hoop and to move through it in the whole cosmos. Now, those odds are pretty steep, and yet you've done it. You have done that. You have succeeded in that. You've achieved that. As I remind us all, it's your greatest achievement, and you'll never top it. You'll never top it. You've done it. You've been there. You've been to the mountain. You've been to the mountain, and you went through that hoop. Now, whether or not you're happy you did or not, that's another thing. But we could get to the point where we're very happy, not only happy, but very grateful that we did. And so communication is so super important. It's there aren't any words to describe how significant it is and how important it is for you and for me to be in great communication with ourselves and with each other. Because to be in communication with the self is to be in communication with that which is our true and real essence, our truth. It's to know ourselves as the consciousness that we are. It's to know ourselves of the power and the force that we are. It's to know ourselves as the presence that we are. It's to know ourselves as the one that we are. It's to know ourselves as the image and likeness of that which created us that we are. Because it is written in the handbook, it's written on page 270, I believe, and it might even be chapter 3 and thereabouts, that the universe exists in order to give expression to spirit. And you and I exist to give self-expression to ourselves because we are already the expression of spirit in form. So we exist to give self-expression to the power and the presence and the oneness and the wholeness and the energy and the force and so on. We are a force. And we're a force to be reckoned. My mother used to say to us as children, "You're a force to be reckoned with, child." I don't think she meant it, though, as a compliment. But we are a force to be reckoned with, a force to be reckoned with. But we have to reckon with ourselves with regard to what that force is and how that force is to be used, how that can be communicated to the world. So how are you communicating this force, this power, this presence to the world? How am I? That's the question we have to ask ourselves this week. And do you think that we can create a new species of communication with ourselves and others as a consequence of knowing this? Can we indeed? Because we are called to go where no one has ever gone before with regard to human communications. We really are in this acute age, to go where no one else has gone before. That's what we have to, that's what a new paradigm is all about. A new way of being, a new thought, for God's sakes, like we've never heard that term before, new thought. We've got to have new thought to be able to cope with today and what's going on within it. Because communication is at its zenith at the moment. It's never been better in the sense that we have so much availability to facts and news and anything we want to look up, it's there at the touch of a button, and we have the information we need. This is an information overload society we're living in at the moment. But we don't want to be stuffing more information into us. We want to be allowing more information to come through us, the information that leads us back home to understanding our real and true nature, our real and true reason for being, our real and true amazing selves. That's what we're asked to be able to share and to communicate from and as and with. So our conversations this week, I know, are going to be up. We're going to up the ante on those conversations this week, because test it out in your own life, test it out in your own world, create a new species of communication with yourself and with others. How you regard yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you listen to yourself, how you are with yourself and in your presence, how comfortable are you? I still know people who cannot bear to be without some kind of noise or another in the house while they're in it. That just can't cope with the silence of it all. Because guess what? When you're in silence, you're in your own company. There's no getting away from it. You're in your own company when you are in silence. When there's silence. If there's you may have your iTunes or wherever it is on, and you're still listening to a song, you're not with yourself, you're with the song, the music, and so on, etc. So this is what we're called to this week, to spend time in your own company and see. You're not going to do this overnight, and neither am I, but to see how you are with yourself and how you communicate with yourself and what you feel about yourself and what you're imagining about yourself, to see how you're doing, grade yourself, and then see where you need improvement, and then work on making that grade stronger as you dedicate yourself to be better with yourself and consequently better with others as far as communication is concerned. Because listening into our communications, I'm telling you, wherever you are, whether it's listening to a person screaming into their Bluetooth in the supermarket, Or at the restaurants and so on, where everybody thinks they're invisible and can't be heard by anybody else, only the group around them or whatever. It's not very uplifting or elevating for the most part, I can assure you. I know that. And so this is what we're called to do if we want to create a world that works for everybody. We want to create a better world for everybody. This is what we have to do, is to be present more to ourselves so that we can present more to the world and to others, so that we can be the best of ourselves to the world, the best of ourselves to the world, the best of ourselves to the world. All of us are just settling for. All of us are settling for. None of us have reached that stage where the best of ourselves all or most of the time. We're not. We're just sitting on the edge of that and tipping our feet into it, and that's about it. Some of us maybe get into our knees, but that's all. There's so much more to us. There's so much wealth, there's so much richness. Let me tell you, you and I are standing on the field of diamonds. You and I are standing upon the oil fields. We really are, of consciousness. We don't have to go searching for them. They're right under our feet. They're right where we are. They're right within us. We just have to unleash them. We have to discover them and recognize them. Now, I know that spiritual communication may be bringing you to mind the times when you're in spiritual contact with your source, when you're in meditation, when you're in spiritual mind treatment, when you're walking a labyrinth, when you're having a deep spiritual discussion, whether you're reading a deep spiritual book or whatever. It's easy to think of that as spiritual communication, but that's only part of it. We're in spiritual communication, I will remind us all of the time, every moment of every day, every breath we breathe, we're thinking something about ourselves or about others or whatever. And what we're thinking is creating the world that we are experiencing right now. What you have thought, what you have felt about your life and your living, what you have imagined has produced all your life circumstances to where they are right here and right now. Some of them may be good and very good, and others may be not so good. But we can always be better. It doesn't matter how good our lives is. We can be more. Not get more, not have more, but be more. And no matter how awful our lives may have been, we can always turn that around and discover the opposite of that, because thinking makes it so. That's your power. That's the energy. That's the force. It is a creative force, a creative energy into which you and I think and feel and imagine. And out of what we're thinking and feeling and imagining into it, out comes your life's experience. Oh, so easy. I just have to think more good thoughts, and my life will drastically change for the better. Well, yeah, but there's always a but when it comes to humanity. And the but is, but you have to have a conviction that this is so. You have to feel that this is so. You have to be on the shadow of a doubt that this is so. You have to have absolute power and trust in the creative process of your life. You have to know that the creative process of life is always in a forward movement, and that you can be in that swing of the sea, so to speak, in that flow of forward movement if you so desire. But you have to think yourself into it, feel yourself into it, imagine yourself into it, and act as though it is so. Gosh, isn't that a new thought? Act as though it is so, and it will be so. Act as though it is so, and one day you'll wake up and there it is, just as you were imagining it to be. There it is. Fancy that. That's the only way anything gets made. That's the only way anything gets done. That's the only way anything gets created, out of a consciousness flow. Consciousness flow. So since the universe exists so that spirit can express itself in form, you exist because spirit wanted to express itself by means of you in form, so that you could self-express as spirit self-expressed. Through what? Contemplation, thinking, imagination, and adding the umph to it, which is feeling, conviction. Conviction, the power of conviction, where nothing can topple you off of what you're believing and thinking and feeling about the good that you desire and how it's going to happen. So, my dear ones, you are called today, that's why we're here, you are called today to be better, to do better, to think more wondrously well, to feel more wondrously well, to imagine more wondrously well, in the way we communicate with first ourselves and then with each other, so that we can create this new species of thought in our world. And remember, that's going to be far more awesomely powerful than all the banners you and I could wave, or all the walks that you and I could participate in. Now, can you imagine a ton of people walking for peace when in their own lives there's chaos? Chaos. It's far from peace they're feeling. It'll have an impact, but it won't have anything like the impact it could have if I was walking as peace, if I was being peace as I walked. And let me tell you, if I was being peace as I walked, I wouldn't be arguing with anybody, I wouldn't be deliberating with anybody, I wouldn't be debating with anybody, I wouldn't be trying to convince anybody. I wouldn't give too much energy to being over-enthusiastic about waving those banners. I'd just be peace. And peace doesn't need to wave a banner, just walk. Just walk. Can you imagine the power of a whole huge stream of people walking in total silence and peace? Ooh, I get God pumps just thinking about it. I tell you, that would be more than a miracle. That would be transcendence, because I know how hard it is to get a small group to be silent for 2 minutes, or to close their eyes for more than 50 seconds. That's very difficult for some. Practice it. Practice it this week. Practice being in your own company. Make a date with yourself every single day to just be in your own company, to tune into yourself, to listen into yourself, to see how you're doing and what's going on. And if you can adjust that, adjust it, because you can adjust it. Adjust it if it needs adjusted. All of us need recalibrating all the time, just as our gadgets do. We need recalibrating all of the time. You know, just as you take the car and put it in the body shop, we need to take ourselves and put our bodies in the soul shop and be home to ourselves in graciousness and appreciation. Congratulate yourself for getting yourself born. Oh my gosh, oh golly gee, as I say, you're crowning glory. You got yourself born. You came into being. You came into form because you responded to an impulse to know yourself as life knows you, as its own image, as its own likeness, as its own possibility of wholeness and completeness and fullness of being, because that is what we're all about. That's why we're here. And we'll keep showing up in places like this until we get it. Once we get it, we don't need to do that anymore. We just be wherever we are, be, and every moment will just be the same as the next moment. And it'll all be great and grand and glorious no matter what's going on. But here we will come, so that we can remind ourselves that we're more than what we are in the marketplace. And God knows we need to bring our best selves to the marketplace, do we not? We certainly do. I mean, the power of the word. By your words, you will be upheld, uplifted, advanced. Or by your words, you will be destroyed, so the scriptures say. I mean, it's all up to you. However your life is going to be, it's up to you, and it's on nobody else. It is on nobody else, and nobody else is responsible for you and the way you are. No one, no one, no one. Now, some of us may have been born into dire circumstances, born into horrible conditions and situations, and have had horrible experiences. But that's not our truth, and we don't have to stay there. And if we stay in the story, if we keep going over it and over it and over it again, look at what we're feeding our consciousness. Look at what we're imagining. Look at what we're feeling about ourselves and thinking about ourselves every time we tell ourselves another horror story about ourselves. It's horror. And you're not going to move out of that, and neither am I, until I change the story I want to tell myself. Now I need to start making up new stories to tell myself, create new stories to tell myself. Once upon a time, there was this infinite possibility roaming the cosmos. blah, 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 however the story is going to be, until you found that circular hoop and jumped through. And then everything was available to you. Unlimitlessness was available to you. You'd made it through the first rung, so to speak. And you can make it through all the other rungs of great good too that is here for you to realize. And here you are, and here you can realize it. Not I wish I was somewhere else. Not I wish I was someone else. Not I wish I was in another time. Not I wish I was in a more advanced society or whatever. But you're here, and you're here now, and it's the perfect place for you to be, or you wouldn't be here. This is where you chose to be, and you're here now. Make the most of it. Let's all make the most of it. So you're called, and I could go on telling you about all that the great ones have said, the philosophers and all of those wonderful mystics and all of those great theologians and all of those great poets and all of those great literalists and all the rest of it. And you might feel that's interesting and be inspired a bit, but the inspiration won't last. But I'm here to tell you about yourself and your own story. I couldn't tell you a greater story than your story. I couldn't tell you about a greater person than you. So that you can inspire yourselves to be all that you're here to be, all that you came here to be, all that you agreed to be when you came here. And it's not going to happen the way we've been doing it, this thing called the upliftment of the planet, the redemption of the planet. I'm the redemption of the planet, you're the redemption of the planet, but I first have to redeem myself before I can be of any use in that regard. And so it's an integral thing. And in our conversations, as we've been invited to change the I to we when we're in conversations. Let our conversations be about we, not about me. And most of our conversations are about me, not about we. And it takes two people to come to that agreement. And in the best conversations of all are the ones that people go into it knowing I'm the listener. Both parties are both individuals. I'm the listener. I'm here to listen. I'm here to discover something. I'm here to perhaps find a new way of being able to communicate better. But I certainly am here to listen and to learn, to listen and to learn. It's the only way of learning is by listening. You don't learn when you're not listening. As you know, when the ruler's rapped on the desk and you're asked, child, are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening? So in those conversations, it's the we. The we must transplant the me. If you and I are going to have a better life for ourselves and in the world, that we is so important, and the we understands no boundaries. No boundaries, no boundaries. The we understands no prejudices, no prejudices of any kind, because I'm the one and the one is me, and the one has chosen it that way to be, and I'm not going to be able to change that one iota. That's just how it is. So suck it up, Moira. That's how it is. We are all one. One life. That life is God life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. That's what the teaching is. Always the teaching is that. And we are told, be not speakers of the word, be doers of the word. In other words, be the word. Stop talking about it. I'm tired listening to you. I'm listening so much and you're so loud at what you're saying that I can't even see you or experience you in any way. It's talk. Well, now it's just to be. That is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. So, from the me-me's to the we's. From the me-me's to the we. We. And if we do remember that we all the way home, you get home through the we, not through the me. Not through the me. And so, my dear ones, you got it. You're covered. You have it. You've been tagged. You're it. And so measure up to the greatness that you are. Be the greatness that you are. Know yourself. Yes, I'm alive. It's alive in me. And that's why I'm alive in it. The power, the presence, the life, and the light of all that is good and whole and wholesome. Isn't surely that what you and I would like to convey to ourselves and to our world, for no other reason than to know by so being I am putting so much on that plate, on the table, to feed the hungry, starving souls that are requiring such food, you being that grace-filled food for the world, because that's what you are, and you're no less than that. So think of yourselves differently. Think of yourself as who you are and what you are. I am the power, I am the presence, I am that which I am, and that which I am is Spirit's own self in form. Blessed are you in creation. Blessed are you, my dear ones, and guess what? Holy is your name, and so it is.